So we are going to start with problem number 5. It says in triangle CAT, the measure of angle C is 15x degrees. The measure of angle A is 5x plus 40 degrees, and the measure of angle T is 10x plus 20 degrees. Find the measures of each interior angle of triangle CAT, then classify the triangle. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a picture to go along with this scenario that I can mark up. So we know the measure of angle C is 15x degrees. So I'm going to call this C right here. Thank you very much. We will put 15x degrees in this angle. It says the measure of angle A is 5x plus 40 degrees. So I'm going to pick one of the other angles. Let's call this one down here angle A. And that is 5x plus 40 degrees. And then we also have angle T, which is 10x plus 20 degrees. So here's T, 10x plus 20 degrees. Morning, Sally. Thank you. All right. So where to from here? What did we learn about on Friday about the 3 interior angles of a triangle? Flip it back over to page 1 if you need to. There was a very special theorem that we learned about the 3 interior angles of a triangle. What'd you say? They add up to 180, yes. So the measure of angle C plus the measure of angle A plus the measure of angle T is equal to 180 degrees. So then we can come in here and substitute in the place of angle C, we're going to put 15x. In the place of angle A, we're going to put 5x plus 40. And in the place of angle T, we're going to put 10x plus 20. Set that equal to 180. So then we'll go through and we'll combine our like terms. 15x, 5x, and 10x would combine to give me what? 15, 5, and 10 would combine to give me what? 30. So I have 30x plus, and now we're going to combine our constants, our things without any variables, 40 and 20. We get 60, yes. So 30x plus 60 equals 180. And then we're going to subtract 60 from both sides. So I have 30x equals what? 120. Then we're going to divide both sides by 30. What is 120 divided by 30? 4. So x is 4. The directions didn't say to find x. The directions said find the measure of each interior angle of triangle CAT and then classify the triangle. So we're going to need to find the measure of angle C, which is 15x. So I'm going to take 4 and substitute it in for x. So I have 15 times 4. What is 15 times 4? 60. So the measure of angle C is 60 degrees. There's my first angle. Then we need the measure of angle A, which is 5x plus 40. We're going to put 4 in the place of the x, so I have 5 times 4 plus 40. What is 5 times 4? 20 plus 40? 60. So the measure of angle C is 60 and the measure of angle A is 60. Now we still have the measure of angle T. Measure of angle T is 10x plus 20. So measure of angle T is 10 times 4 plus 20. Ten times 4 is 40 plus 20, 60. So we get 60 degrees. Yes. Okay. Got it. My apologies. All right, so angle C is 60. Angle A is 60. Angle T is 60. We want to classify this triangle. It says then classify the triangle. Remember, every triangle, when we classify it, has two names, two classifications. One is based on the sides, and the other one is based on the angles. What do you notice about these three angles here? They're all the same. We have 3 congruent angles, which means we will have 3 congruent sides. If the angles are all congruent, then the sides are all congruent. Yes, so it's going to be an equilateral triangle. Put your phone away, please. This is equilateral. And now we have to decide based on the angles, because that's based on the sides. So when we classify it based on the angles, my options are a right triangle, an acute triangle, or an obtuse triangle. Would this be a right triangle? No, none of the angles are 90 degrees. It is acute. To be a right triangle, one of the angles would be a right angle, a 90-degree angle. To be an obtuse triangle, one of the angles would be bigger than 90. To be acute, all 3 of the angles are less than 90. So we're going to say triangle. Let's see if I can draw a better triangle. Triangle CAT is an acute equilateral triangle. Triangle CAT is an acute equilateral triangle. Nicely done. Let's try another one that is just like that. Number 6, in triangle GEO, the measure of angle E is 4 times the measure of angle O, and the measure of angle G is 9 less than the measure of angle E. Find all angles and classify the triangle. So first thing I'm going to do is to just draw a triangle. It says the measure of angle E is 4 times the measure of angle O. So that means the measure of angle O is going to be the one that I call X. So the measure of angle O is equal to X degrees. E is 4 times that, so the measure of angle E would be 4x. And the measure of angle G is 9 less than the measure of angle E. Remember, the measure of angle E was 4x. And we want 9 less than that. So that means the measure of angle G is 4x minus 9 degrees. So I'm going to come in here and label this triangle. I'm going to call this angle over here O, so that's my x degrees. I'm going to call this angle up here E, so that's my 4x degrees. And I'm going to call this angle G, so that would be 9 less than 4x. So 4x minus 9. Bless you. What can I do from here? What can I do now that I have all three angles? Add them all together to equal 180. Absolutely correct. So the measure of angle G plus the measure of angle E plus the measure of angle O is equal to 180. In the place of angle G, I'm going to put 4x minus 9. In the place of the measure of angle E, I'm going to put 4x. And in the place of the measure of angle O, I'm going to put x. Set that equal to 180. Now I combine my like terms. I have 4x, 4x, and x. How many x's do I have? How many? I'm sorry, I didn't hear. I don't have 3 x's. I have 4x, 4x, and x. 9. 4 and 4 gives me 8, and then one more gives me 9. We have 9x. And then we only have one constant. We only have one piece that does not have an x with it. It's this minus 9. So 9x minus 9 equals 180. And then I'm going to add 9 to both sides. So I get 9x equals 189. And then we divide both sides by 9. What is 189 divided by 9? $21. So x is 21. So now let's find the measure of all of these angles. The measure of angle G is 4x minus 9. So I do 4 times 21 minus 9. Grab a calculator real quick and tell me what you get when you do 4 times 21 minus 9. What do we get? 75, thank you. So the measure of angle G is 75 degrees. The measure of angle E is 4x. So the measure of angle E would be 4 times 21, which is 84. So 75 degrees and 84 degrees. And then finally we have the measure of angle O, which would be how much? 21 degrees, because that is x, and x is 21. On the last problem we did, all three angles came out to be the exact same size, and we said that meant that all three sides were the exact same size. Did any of my angles come out to be the same? No. We have no congruent angles, which means I will have no congruent sides. What do we call a triangle that has no congruent sides? Scalene, yes. So this is a scalene triangle. That's based on the sides. Then we need to look at based on the angles, right, acute, or obtuse. Are any of my angles 90 degrees? None of the angles are 90 degrees, so it's not a right triangle. Are any of the angles bigger than 90? No, then they are acute. So triangle GEO is an acute scalene triangle. We have one more problem like that. I'm going to give you guys about 3 minutes. I want you to try to do number 7. 3 minutes might not be enough time to get all the way through the problem. That's okay, but I'm going to give you guys 3 minutes, and then we'll start working through that one together. But I want you to start it on your own and get as far through it as you can. All right, let's look at this one. It says in triangle TRY, the measure of angle R is triple the measure of angle T. So which one of those, R or T, should we call X? Measure of angle T. So we're going to call this one X degrees. So X degrees goes right here. And so then how big is angle R? 3x, yes. Angle R would be 3x degrees. And then we have the measure of angle Y, which is 14 more than double the measure of angle R. So 14 more than double the measure of angle R. Angle R is 3x. And we are wanting to double that. What would double 3x be? That'd be 6x. And then we want 14 more. So 6x plus 14 for the measure of angle Y. So I have x, 3x, and 6x plus 14. What do I do with those 3 now? Yes, we're going to add them up and equal them to 180. So the measure of angle T plus the measure of angle R plus the measure of angle Y equals 180. So we have x plus 3x plus 6x plus 14 equals 180. Then we combine our x's together. I have x, 3x, and 6x, giving me how many x's total? 10. So 10x plus 14 equals 180. Then I'm going to minus 14 from both sides. What is 180 minus 14? How much? 166. And then we divide both sides by 10, and we get a decimal for the first time doing one of these problems. That's okay. It does not mean we made a mistake. So x is 16.6. So that means the measure of angle T, which is just x, is 16.6 degrees. The measure of angle R, which is 3x, would be 3 times 16.6. What is 3 times 16.6? 49.8 degrees for the measure of angle R. And then the measure of angle Y is 6x plus 14. So we do 6 times 16.6 plus 14. What do we get for the measure of angle Y? 113.6. So 113.6 degrees. All right, now we need to classify the triangle. Are any of these angles the same size? No. We have no congruent angles. So that means we have no congruent sides, which means this is what kind of triangle if none of the sides are congruent? Scalene, yes. And now we have to classify it based on the angles, right, acute, or obtuse. Are any of the angles 90? Then it's not a right angle. Are any of the angles bigger than 90? Yes. This one right here. If it's bigger than 90, if I have one angle that's bigger than 90, then we say it's what kind of triangle? Obtuse, yes. So I can say triangle TRY is an obtuse scalene triangle. Nicely done. All right. Do you guys feel okay about those 3 problems that we just did? Wonderful. Let's go to the next section then. It's just underneath problem number 7, same page. Congruent triangles, CPCTC. CPCTC means corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. So here's the first C, here's the P, here's the second C, the T, and the last C. Corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent, CPCTC. So looking here at number 2, I've got 2 triangles that are marked up with congruences. We have congruence marks on the sides, and we have congruence marks in the angles. I want to go through and name the corresponding sides that are congruent. So I'm going to look at my first triangle here, triangle ABC. I notice that this side right here has 1 congruence marking on it. What's the congruent piece on the other triangle? KL or LK, yes, this one right here. Those are congruent segments, so those would be my corresponding sides. So I'm going to say segment BC is congruent to segment LK, or you could do KL. All right, let's move on to another side. Let's do this side right here. We have 2 congruence marks on it, on triangle ABC. What's the corresponding side on my other triangle? JK, right here. So we're going to say AB is congruent to JK. And then what's the third pair of corresponding congruent sides? AC and LJ. AC and LJ. Beautiful. Now we're going to do the corresponding angles that are congruent. On triangle ABC, I notice that angle B up at the top has just 1 congruence marking on it. What would the corresponding congruent angle be on this other triangle? K. It has just 1 congruence marking on it right here. So we can say angle B is congruent to angle K. What is the corresponding congruent angle to angle C? L. 2 congruence marks, 2 congruence marks. So C and L. Angle C is congruent to angle L. And then what would the last pair of corresponding congruent angles be? A and J. Angle A congruent to angle J. The triangle congruence statement, right down here. We are going to match up the corresponding congruent parts of the triangles in our triangle congruent statement. So the order of the letters matters when we're talking about these 2 triangles. So the first triangle, when I go to name the first triangle, I can put the letters in any order I want to. So ABC or CBA or BAC, I can choose any order for the first one. I'm going to go ahead and call this triangle ABC. Is congruent to triangle. And now for this second one, I have to make sure that the order on the letters here matches up the corresponding congruent pieces. So we said that A, which is the first letter in this triangle name, is congruent to what angle on the other triangle? J. So I have to start this one with J, because these two angles are congruent. The next letter we have in here is B. And so it would have to be K, because B and K are congruent there. Yes. So J, K, and then what's congruent to C? L. These two are congruent. The triangle congruent statement matches up not only my angles that are congruent, the triangle congruent statement also matches up the segments that are congruent. Notice these first two letters here, AB. That's one of my segments, AB. We said AB was congruent to what? JK. That is the first two letters here. So this side, AB, is congruent to this side, JK. So that triangle congruent statement matches up the corresponding congruent angles and the corresponding congruent sides. We're going to put a note here. Make sure the congruent angles are in the same position. First, second, third, and the congruent sides match up. First two, second two, and first and third. Let me show you what I mean by that. I already pointed out how side AB was congruent to side JK. That's the first two letters. First two letters. Those are corresponding congruent sides. Second two, that would be BC and KL. All right, here is BC and KL. Those are corresponding congruent sides right here. Or we look at the first and third letter. That's AC. And the first and third letter here, that's JL. Here's AC and JL. Those are corresponding congruent sides. So first two letters and first two letters need to be congruent. Second two letters and second two letters. And then first and third, first and third. Let's look down at number 3 and see if we can make some sense from number 3. Show that the polygons are congruent by identifying all the congruent corresponding parts, then write a congruence statement. So angle P is the first one that we want. Angle P has one congruence marking on it. What does that correspond to on the other polygon? Angle G also has one congruence marking on it. So angle P is congruent to angle G. Perfect. What about angle Q right here? What does that correspond to? Angle F. Two congruence markings, two congruence markings. So angle Q is congruent to angle F. What about angle R? E. Angle R is congruent to angle E. And finally, that leaves angle S, which has 4 congruence markings. What does that correspond to? Angle D has 4 congruence markings there. So P and G are corresponding and congruent. Q and F are corresponding and congruent. R and E are corresponding and congruent. S and D are corresponding and congruent. Now we're going to do our sides. Side PQ has 1 congruence marking on it. What does that correspond to on the other polygon? GF, right down here, has 1 congruence marking on it. So PQ is congruent to GF. One of the things I want you guys to notice, here we said P and G were congruent. Here's P and here's G. We said that Q and F were congruent. Q and F. So when I look at my sides, it still has the same congruences that I see up here when I'm talking about my angles. All right, what about QR? Oops. Which one? FE. QR right here has 3 congruence markings on it. FE or EF has 3 congruence markings on it. Remember, when we write a segment name, the order of the letters does not matter. What about RS? What would correspond to RS? Which ones? ED. Segment ED. And what about SP? GD or DG or GD. Doesn't matter on the order of the letters there. So we can do DG or GD. Complete the congruent statement. Polygon PQRS is congruent to polygon blank. So I have to match this up. Which angle did we say was congruent to P? G, so I would have to start this with G. The second letter here is Q. What angle is corresponding and congruent to Q? F. Then we have R. What's corresponding and congruent to R? E. And finally, we have S. What is corresponding and congruent to S? D. Now, before I can call this done, I want to go through and make sure that all of my corresponding segments are also in the right order here and are congruent. So I have PQ and GF. PQ and GF. So I'm good there. Then I'm going to do the middle 2 letters, QR and FE. QR and FE right here. Last 2 letters, RS and ED. RS and ED are corresponding and congruent. And then we do first and last. PS would be my first and last letters here. There's PS, even though it's in a backwards order, it's still the same 2 letters. And first and last, I have GD. Here's GD, same 2 letters. Order does not matter. So far, so good? All right. Let's go ahead and stop there for today. We will pick up with page 4 tomorrow after we are done grading your homework. Homework is due tomorrow. If you need another copy of the homework, very bottom paper right here in this red organizer has extra copies of the homework that is due tomorrow.